Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Chris Rossini, co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Great to be with you, Dr.
Oh,
Paul.
very good. Let's talk about money and why our station doesn't have enough. No, I'm not going to talk about that. Why do the people who have so much seem to be so confused? And the people I'm talking about are the people who run the monetary system. They have trillions and trillions of dollars, and they seem that more they get, the more they mismanage it. Anyway, there's exciting things going on, and we've been critical of the Fed. We wanted to audit the Fed all along, and we want to end the Fed. And my prediction has always been we won't get enough people in Washington to just vote to end it. That's how they brought about the Fed, the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. They just voted and created this monster and delivered it over to the management by secret cabal, that nobody knows exactly what they're doing. But one thing it looks like, Chris, what's going on right now is they've lost a lot of credibility. They don't seem to be able to do anything, though they got away with a lot in these past 100 years plus. But they systematically undermine, I even think, their original intent of the Federal Reserve. And I think it's totally out of control. I think the Fed is on its last legs, and there's been a few things that's happening that indicates that they don't really have a lot of control at all. When you think about in September, when they lost control of the repo market and they had to pump in, literally hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and they do it nightly because the interest rates are going up. And once again, when interest rates go up, that's the market speaking. Liquidation of debt is the market speaking. When the government speaks and the Fed speaks, they want printing a lot of money, and they want low interest rates, and they want to spend a lot of money. And for a while, they can do it because they can manipulate, and our government and our country is still strong financially. But since the engine of all this mischief has been the Federal Reserve, I think this point that they've lost control of the overnight market and the interest rates, and then just this week, 3 days ago, on the 3rd, they were worried. The fluctuation market's going up 1,000 points up and down 2,000 points, so they are getting nervous, and I think. Once again, it's evidence that they're on their last legs. So they had an emergency meeting, the FOMC, which is very unusual, and they had been talking about maybe sometime in March or April they would lower the rates by 25 basis points. But they have this emergency meeting in the midst of this stock market all over the place. And not only do they, lower interest rates 25, they lower them 50 basis points, which just caused more gyrations. The immediate reaction was, which was the usual thing for the last 50 years. Oh, the Fed's lowering money, they're pumping in, this is good, the stocks are going up, we're back to normalcy again. That lasted about 30 minutes, and all of a sudden the stocks went crashing down again. So they're in the midst of that, and they don't realize that they're trying to manage something they can't manage. And sometimes the evidence is pretty clear that they're managing for the benefit of certain people. And who has benefited from this? Big government, they benefit, and the militarism benefits. The welfare state benefits from it, and deficit financing benefits from it. All these things, and they've been able to tide it over, mainly because we have been a very productive nation, and we could convey trust into our currency and into our system because we controlled the reserve currency. That's the international gold for now, and they can control that, and therefore we control the financial system. But I believe this is a big event happening right now. I believe the evidence is getting stronger every single day that the Fed has lost it, and I think they know it. They're contradicting themselves. They change their viewpoints sometimes in the same day that they make a decision. They're changing it back again. So the roller coasters has been out there, and I think that it's going to be that way. And we're just wondering, when that last straw is going to come, when that straw that breaks the camel's back. I wonder when that's coming. And I might talk a little bit about that a little later, but I think we're close to that last straw.
Right, Dr. Paul. We're just reporting as it happens. You know, the Fed did panic this week by dropping another 50 basis points from a hugely low level. And the stock market is rocky at the moment, but there's no saying that with all this money that they're pumping in, that the stock market won't recover or even make new highs. And it'll be easy at that time, if that happens, to think, oh, everything is great. But you know, that's on this show, we don't focus on the surface area. You can go to the mainstream media or even the president's tweets and they'll lie to you about how great everything is. Here we're concerned about what's beneath the surface. And you could think of it as maybe like a Hollywood movie, how they show you a restaurant, the front of the house, how it's all beautiful. But then they open a door and they go to the back of the house and it's a smoke-filled dungeon with a bunch of plotters. Well, that's what we focus on. We focus on the back of the house and what's going on over there. And what's coming out of there is they're not doing so well. They're losing control. And that's because that's what happens to central planners all throughout history. They corner themselves and they ultimately find themselves with so many insurmountable problems that they created themselves that they ultimately have to throw in the towel. And like you said, when is that last straw? There's no way to know that in advance, but we can tell that they're not doing well.
You know, I sort of like this analogy about the straw that breaks the Fed's back. Because the theory goes about that old saying about breaking the camel's back is that the camel's loaded down. How much weight can they put on this camel? They keep putting it on and putting it on, and it always seems to work. So they continue to do it, not realizing there's a limit to what the camel can carry. And then they claim that limit is very sensitive. You put one more straw on it, it's too heavy, and the camel collapses. And I was thinking, I wonder where that last straw is coming from. And right now we're in the midst of a crisis that is, I think, concocted by some people, and that is the crisis over the coronavirus. I know it's a very, very serious problem. I get criticized for not trying to fearmonger and tell everybody it's the end of the world. But I think that has something to do with the last straw. You know, we have people, 25,000 people a year die from influenza, and there's 650,000 die around the world. And right this year, we're in the midst of this. I think there's been 14 deaths or something in the United States from it. That doesn't mean there's not a problem. It's just in proportion. You know, it's so small. I think I hope the dust settles, and I hope that my perceptions are right, because it would be a great benefit. But that we're not going to have everybody's waiting. When's the pandemic going to start? When's it going to start? When are you going to go to Costco's and load up with food? And you know, who knows exactly what's going to happen? But right now, the evidence is not very strong that a lot of people are going to die from it. The kids don't get the disease. Some people never have a disease and they get the infection. Some people get a cold and they never know about it. And now they're worrying about how quickly the president can be responsible for getting everybody tested, and there's not enough test kits, because you have to test everybody. Because what if they're positive and have no symptoms? So you have to test everybody. So it's on and on. So I think that's a real mixed bag. So there's a political connotation there. It's good politics. You gotta be for spending the money. So I think they were producing that straw this past week. Once again, on the big issues, the Republicans and the Democrats get together. So they came up and said, emergency funding, the world's coming to an end. So they came up with $8 billion to confront, you know, the coronavirus. Well, $8 billion, it used to be a sum of money, but no, that's chicken feed, so that's just a little straw in the market. That's not much. But the Democrats and Republicans came together, and it was signed into law on this very day. And the whole thing is could that be that last straw that just overburdens our financial system? The last straw is always supposed to be small, just barely there and noticeable. All the big straws, the tons and tons of debt has been piled on the Fed forever, and all the mischief the Fed has done, the wars that they have fought with printed money, and the business cycle, the deflations and the inflations, and the people who have suffered throughout the last 100 years or so, and how they produced a system that protects the very wealthy, and you have more trillionaires and billionaires than ever before. So it's something that I suspect that we're looking at it, and that we will, of course, witness it someday when the last straw was placed on the overburdened system and the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve is acting like they've lost control. And I remember talking to many Federal Reserve Board chairmen, and when I would challenge them on an issue, I would say, well, A is this, and this is B, and this shouldn't this happen, and I was expressing my concern, and they were always very polite, and they said, yes, I believe you're right about that, but as long as it's done orderly, it's okay. Prices going up orderly, and then it's okay. Well, I would say that they have totally failed. There's nothing orderly about the financial markets today. So, Chris, how are we going to get this thing fixed?
Well, we don't have to do much, but spread the ideas of liberty. And Dr. Paul, we do get a lot of comments that we do read them, and very often one that we see is, well, when is this going to happen? When are we going to end the Fed? When is the last straw? As if we can give a date and time. Otherwise, we don't know what we're talking about. No, you have to realize that we're talking about a global scheme here, which the Fed is the heart of. This is so huge with other countries involved, with so many interests, and there's tremendous uncertainty and so many variables. It's not like a little neighborhood scheme where you could say, oh, it has 2 days, 2 weeks tops. Maybe you could have a way to predict. This is huge. This is a global in scale. So the best you can do is know economics, know human nature, and then you can observe what they do. And you can watch them corner themselves. You see unpayable debt. Well, you could take that piece off the game table. There's $17 trillion in bonds with negative yields. Take that piece off the table. A welfare state that is out of control. A military empire that's out of control. So you watch them take the pieces off the table themselves, and they will ultimately checkmate themselves. If people that pay attention close enough to Dr. Paul, he has said, while we should end the Fed, he said that the Fed will ultimately end themselves.
Okay, Chris, that's a good assessment. And I want to just go back to what the original intent and the instructions to the Federal Reserve was. They were to have policies of stable prices and full employment, and they added on, with Humphrey Hawkins. And so that's their goal. Right now, the government statistics shows that there's, full employment, but sometimes you can't always believe government statistics. But anyway, things are better in that manner than it has been in the past. But they added on to the responsibility of the Fed is to regulate long-term interest rates to sort of justify all this QE activity and all this interference, which they can't control. But they've also accepted with a little bit of reluctance, and that's what's going on right now, is why they're scurrying around and why they've gotten the attention, and they may be losing it because the most important role for the Fed, from their viewpoint, is to make sure the stock market remains steady and always goes up. And it was doing quite well for 10 years now because they've been inflating like crazy. Stocks have been going up. They've been going up especially in the last couple of years with the Fed printing like crazy and the government spending like crazy. But it's all a big bubble, and that's what we're seeing it coming to an end. But they've designed this to protect the stock market. That's their chief goal from their viewpoint. But the fallacy of this whole thing that we're talking about, once government gets involved, anything even leaning towards socialism and interventionism, is interfering with the price structure. Because, Economics 101 tells the story that, you have a supply and demand. Demand goes up, prices go up, and the production goes up. And yet we have a Federal Reserve that is supposed to have stable prices, which is the wrong thing. You want fluctuating prices at the market level. Now, where the Fed went wrong and where this country went wrong and where the Fed caused so much mischief is they took it upon themselves to assume the most important price for them to fix is the interest rates. And look at where it is. It's negative interest rates. You have to pay the bank to take your money. Because you say, oh, no, it's not negative yet. Oh, yes, it is. The price inflation is much more than the government tells us. And the price inflation is 2, 3, 4%, depending on what category you're in. So it's negative. You have to pay a bank to take the money. So the most important price in the world, because the dollar is the most important currency in the world, that we have people secretly rigging the price of it, and it's totally out of control. So they come along in the middle of one day where the stock market's crashing, and they think, well, we know what the rules are, we know what to do. We just turn up the switch, and we'll cut the interest rates and print more money, and it didn't work very well. It didn't work very well, and the overnight rates have gone up as high as 10%. Markets always want to deflate. They want to get rid of the debt and rid of the bad investment. And the Fed and the politicians, everybody else says, no, not this. The politicians are more powerful than the average person that might understand economics, because politically you can't accept the fact that you might have to cut spending. You might have to bring the troops home. You might not have a welfare state. You might have a system where you don't pass out the money to the billionaires. You might have a system that's not corporatism. You might have a free market. It's not in the cards. You know, they're too powerful. They run the show. And that also introduces the notion that we're in a tight spot producing and delivering our message, because it sort of is similar in some ways to the socialists who complain about the same thing. But they're complaining, well, we haven't spent enough. We need lower interest rates. We need more spending, and on and on. But everything I look at now, especially this past month or two, and I started looking more carefully from back in September when overnight rates went to 10%. That was the tip-off that something was coming, and we're there right now. And you're going to see a lot of gyrations. People will take profits in gold and take profits even in the bond market or whatever. And there will not be any sign that the Fed is even coming close to their desire. What's okay as long as it's orderly. It's not orderly, believe me, and more people are starting to realize it, no matter what kind of propaganda you hear. Chris?
Right, Dr. Paul. I'll finish up with hopefully a message of hope, because, you know, this is nonsense that we have to deal with in our lives, but it's not anything new. All throughout history, there are people that have wanted to rule and micromanage the entire world. You could go all the way back. And the truth is, it cannot be done. You know, man is free by nature, and you can't change nature. So even if the authoritarians, whoever they happen to be, whether today it's the Fed or who knows what it'll be in the future, even if they were to follow every single economic law to the T, all the natural laws, it still can't be done. We're not meant to be ruled by these people. Man is free. So, but what we have today is what Dr. Paul has said. We have an empire of lies. They're not even concerned with the truth. They're trying to rule with price controls, price fixing, counterfeiting money, bailouts, wars. These are the tools that they're trying to use to rule the world, apparently. Now, if it can't be done with the truth, it surely will not be done with these tools. So the message of hope is that liberty is already won. Most people don't know about it. We know about it. You know about it, the viewers. And, you know, for today, that should be good enough.
Very good, Chris. I'm glad you're on our show, tell you the truth. That's great. You know, there's another way to look at this. Right now, it's estimated that there are $17 trillion in banks and different places that pay negative interest rates. So therefore, how can you run an economy when you don't know the price of money and you're $17 trillion? All they're doing is looking places for store it. You don't have bills and you don't have gold. You just have computers. So you have to store it someplace and pretend that it's all going to get better. But $17 trillion paying negative, well, that'll consume a little bit of that. But you know, the people who hate gold because they love big government have argued, oh, who would buy gold? You know, it doesn't earn any interest. And who would want gold? Because if you don't have a secure place in your house, you'd have to pay somebody to store it for you. Oh, how terrible, how terrible. But now I see the $17 trillion of people rushing to store it because they're not going to buy more stocks now. And the market says to deflate, and that's why the economy eventually is going to reflect all of that. But right now, the money's sitting in these banks not making any money. I would think they'd say, maybe gold isn't all that bad. The gold prices have been sort of doing the opposite. It's been holding up, and that's a reflection of the dollar. Ultimately, the relationship between gold and the dollar gives you a lot of information. And right now, it's showing that with the gold prices going up, and if you look closely at the dollar chart, the dollar is getting weaker. Not crashing, because people are going to hang on to the dollars for a long, long time, but they are going to be worth less as time goes on. And with all the money created so far, until it's all the bad stuff liquidated, I guess they'll keep looking for places to store it and pay people to keep it for them. Well, I'll tell you what, if I had to pay a storage cost, I think I'd rather pay somebody a couple of bucks to store gold than I would to store $1 trillion that's going to dissipate someday and disappear. Well, obviously our message is the current system has been around a good bit. A lot of people have milked it from the time it started, and especially since Roosevelt, and they've manipulated all the markets. They've been in charge, but there's a limit to the lies that they can tell, and I think that's what we're reaching there. It's the last straw right now. The last straw is there, and I don't believe they're going to salvage this system. They may tinker with it a little bit, but it's not going to come back where the Fed has a control over things with this fine-tuned dial. 25 basis points, oh good, 50 better, this sort of thing. No, that's what the evidence is now. They don't have control of the one thing that they've been controlling and which brought about this disaster, and that is the monopoly control of the price of money and the price of interest rates, because in what happens on any commodity, anything else, it just disappears. It collapses until people get a market price back. But there is no market price for the currency, and until that happens, and of course, the toughest part of this whole thing is to get back to scratch and have real economic growth, you have to liquidate all the bad stuff, all the bad debt, and all the malinvestment. And it's not going to happen. There's going to be a lot more debt piled on, a lot more malinvestment, until it's realized that there's a monetary reform that's going to be required that has to be a lot more sensible than the one that we've been living with for these last 50, 60, 70 years, which has led to this point, which was a predictable event. People who have studied Austrian economics have predicted that this would happen and understand exactly what we should anticipate, although nobody knows the date when this thing really totally collapses. But anyway, the good news is that the answers are so simple. It's limited government. It's not fighting these wars, not having a welfare state, having honest money. Don't let people defraud them. Don't let your government be the counterfeiter of the world. It's not that tough, and we had basically that for a long time. And the wonderful thing about it, under that system, it creates the largest middle class ever, and that's what we used to have. But the middle class now is bitter. They're angry. The wealth is being distributed in a bad manner, and that's why. What do we hear about? We have a presidential debate, and they're promoting socialism, and they're not even bashful about it. At least in the old days, we heard about socialism. Oh yeah, that guy's over there is a socialist, but people generally kept them quiet, and they certainly wouldn't run for the presidency. I'm a socialist now, and we're going to sell the world. Now, so there are healthy things going on because the people will wake up, the failure is there, and the answer is to be found in liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to this Liberty Report. Please come back soon.